The Honourable Nikki Kay.
Mr Speaker, I'm very pleased to speak this evening. At the heart of this budget is the concept of fairness. I was in Japan when the budget was delivered, and one of the things that struck me was the number of people from countries within the Asia-Pacific region who said to me this: New Zealand is the comeback country, and it's really important when we have this budget debate to understand the history here. In 2011, we said there would be 170,000 jobs created, and 3 months before that deadline, we've done it. When we came in from opposition, we were faced with a decade of deficits. We have seen an incredible comeback as a nation. We are within reach of surplus. But what we have also said, and what has been a hallmark of this budget, is that we will not get to surplus at the expense of our most vulnerable. So with all due respect to all of those opposition members who stand up in this House and talk about the surplus, they know that actually when you're in government, it's about the hard choices. And I am proud to be a member on this side of the House to not only be delivering at a fiscal level, so be responsibly managing the books. We've got 150,000 jobs forecast in the next 4 years. We've got 2.8% growth forecast, but also to have delivered over a long period and to now be focusing on some of the harder issues for New Zealand. We have had public sector reform, but we have to do more. And what you can see in this budget is a concerted effort to tackle the hard issues. But they are on the back of years of hard work in areas like some of our most vulnerable children. So let's walk through it. We have, under our government, insulated more houses than ever for vulnerable children. We have, in the last year's budget, really focused on those children having access to good health care. That's why we announced the under-13s free GP visits. We've also done a range of other things. So you can see on the back of that, there is an investment around the Vulnerable Children's Action Plan. And then, on top of that, in this budget, $790 million targeted at those children who are in hardship. This has been a concerted effort over a range of years to help our most vulnerable children. Secondly, if you actually look at what we are trying to do from an education perspective, part of our legacy is significant reform in terms of ensuring where those kids are that need basic numeracy and literacy. Through national standards, we are targeting those schools more than ever in terms of numeracy and literacy, and we are seeing those results around particularly Māori and Pacific Island students. And you can see in this budget another round in terms of investment in those young people, and you can also see that we are fixing those schools that have for years had a state of disrepair. So over successive budgets, we've done more than ever. I think it's about $80 million that we spend on weather tightness and earthquake strengthening, and another $240 million in this budget package around not only ensuring those schools are fixed, earthquake strengthened, but also that we can expand where we need to expand and build for growth, not a model whereby communities have been left in the cold because they have not had the planning for growth that we need. So we've got another area in this budget, building on all of the good work that we've done before, to invest in young people, on top of targeted package of $790 million targeted on most vulnerable children. If you take the area of science and innovation, again, we have had sustained investment, but if you look at this budget alone, $25 million funding for regional research institutes. The budget will give an $80 million boost over 4 years to R&D growth grants. We've got a $113 million boost for tertiary education and skills. This is very significant, and it's very significant particularly in the investment in terms of Māori and Pacific students in trades academies. So for those members opposite to say that we are not investing in young people, then they need to have a really good look at the line items in the budget. We are investing more than ever before, in fact $2.4 billion in this budget in education and health services, but this is 6.5 years of concerted effort around our most vulnerable and young New Zealanders, and I'm very proud of this budget. The second area where we have been really tackling is around housing affordability. Again, let's look back and see what we've done. So, Firstly, the home start grants, we have increased subsidies. Secondly, we've had one phase of RMA reform. Thirdly, we have invested more than ever to really tackle those issues of productivity in the construction sector, but also we have really got to focus in this budget ensuring that those people who are trading effectively or speculating in terms of houses are penalised for that. And again, this is very targeted policy, focusing on penalising those people who may be shutting young New Zealanders out of the housing market, while also respecting the fact that we don't want to be taxing those people in terms of the family home. That is building on an existing policy that we think needs to be enforced properly. That is about tackling the hard issues, having dedicated policy focused on housing affordability. In my area of ACC, again, we were left with a $4.8 billion hole. And again, I heard Andrew Little. Andrew Little went out there when I made these announcements. So, no, I think it's time the member, Mr Cunliffe, listened for a second. Andrew Little went out there when I announced $500 million of ACC reductions, when I announced a new piece of legislation aimed at transparency. I don't have his exact quote, but it went something like this, that it was dishonest and manipulative. This is a piece of legislation based on transparency of the ACC accounts after we've come back from $4.8 billion hole to actually be able to give another round of levy reductions, and this is after we've already given $1.5 billion back. He is so out of touch. He is so emotional that he doesn't actually have any policy that exists behind what he says. We saw it with the means testing of super. We saw it when he commented on ACC. We're seeing it all over the place, and that's because they don't have targeted policy on the other side. They don't have the grunt within the caucus, and then they've got a leader who effectively just goes out there, says what he thinks, and then has the caucus pulling him into line. That is compared to a government who has continually developed good policy that is targeted and invested where it matters. Another area where we have invested where it matters is the Future Investment Fund. Again, we had ideological opposition from members on the other side of the House, but I think the total capital investment in New Zealand is about $939 million. This includes a contingency of up to $210 million for additional investment to bring ultra-fast broadband to 80% of New Zealanders. We've got the Telecommunications Development Levy extended to provide $150 million for major improvements in rural broadband. And I know more than ever, I represent Great Barrier Island, actually, and we have a whole lot of young people there who have not done as well as they could have, but now they are getting access to learning resources that they've never had before. And so members opposite, again, who talk about this budget not delivering for young New Zealanders, these are very tangible things that make a difference to isolated communities and young New Zealanders. We're also seeing Kiwi Rail receives $210 million in new capital investment and a further $190 million as a pre-commitment against Budget 2016. In the area of RMA and fresh water reforms, we've got $37 million of operating funding for 4 years to provide greater national direction and support to councils. Again, this is on the back of a whole lot of other money that we've invested over successive budgets around fresh water. So there's a lot of hot air and rhetoric that comes from the opposition, but at the end of the day, what they know and what I knew when I was in Japan and was there when this budget was delivered by our Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister, they said to me, we are the comeback country. In my view, the numbers show that. We have created over 170,000 jobs. We are on track for 2.8% growth. We are in reach of surplus. But we are a government who's done more than that. We are at the heart of our government is fairness. And you saw that with this targeted $790 million package for some of our most vulnerable children. But that is on the back of so much investment, and whether it's education reform, whether it's under-13s free visits in terms of GP visits, whether it's insulating houses, whether it's an investment in fresh water. We have managed to do that in very difficult fiscal times, balancing the books, but looking after New Zealanders and providing fairness at the heart of this budget. This is a great budget. This is a fair budget. This is in contrast to an opposition who is bereft of ideas. Mr. Speaker, I support this budget.